I wanted to share with you a comparison between viewing a SAS dataset through a browser on the iPad versus on an actual iPhone app. This is an example browser application where you can, it's called Side View, where you can collapse, select on a library. These libraries are collapsible like an Explorer window. And in the browser, as you can know, you can zoom in by pinching. So that allows you to navigate. For example, if I wanted to open up this particular library here, I can select any data set within it, and then, for example, the CM, and it shows me some of the metadata on the other side here. And then, if I wanted to view the data set, I can click on View button here. So, as you are familiar, in a browser, at least on the iPad, you can zoom in on particular rows, and on a browser application, you can click on Next to get the next chunk of data. So it functions very much like a web browser. Some of the pull-down menus is a little different in that, for example, if you wanted to look at variable names, it has a little pop-up, which is nice. And if I wanted to look at labels, it will show me the variable labels in terms of labels and names as an option. So this is a good viewer. You can do other things like pull down menus. For example, if I wanted to build a query, I can go down to this pull down menu and select query here, and it will give me a query screen where I can say for a particular variable, I can browse through valid values for that. This is only one study, but I can then select that, and it applies that particular query statement for me. And then if I were to click OK, some of the buttons, as you can see, it needs to be adjusted on the browser. Let me show you an example here. If I go back to the main screen on this, here's a query screen here. You can see this button is a little bit different than the others. That is because the font size on the browser is not standardized. So now if I adjust the font size, the buttons all line up. So these are some, I guess, drawbacks or differences on running on a browser via the iPad as compared to a browser on a desktop computer. And I'll compare this with an actual iPhone app. Here's another data viewer. It's called BI Flash, a SAS dataset viewer, but it's an actual iPhone application. You can see it has some similarities in that you can choose a library, and then from there you can choose a data set. So I can choose a sample data set here, and let's say AE, and it displays the contents of the dataset on the right. So instead of the collapsible Explorer window, it has a left panel, and you can navigate through the blocks of data in a similar way. Instead of the next previous, you can scroll to the specific block of data that you want. And in a similar way to the attributes, you can choose to have options of having labels and variable names in a similar way. There's one difference though. In the iPhone app, you can do a slide. As you can see here, I can do a little slide and it jumps to, in this case, the 500th row of the data. And another difference too is that in the iPhone app, or I'm sorry, I keep saying iPhone is the actual iPad app, you can do a flip of orientation like this, and you get the full screen view. And then now you can get to your selected data sets through this pop-up, and you can also get to the other sliding down here along with the the pop-up of the data blocks and the options over here. So the layout's a little different, but in essence, it's very similar. You can get to things. I guess the main difference are things like the slider controls, and some of these pop-up options are a little bit different on the iPad app. And the difference is that you have on the horizontal view this dual pane, kind of a master detail type view, where on the browser screen, depending on the application, it may not be optimized for the iPad. So those are the main differences between the same type of application running via the browser on the iPad versus the actual native iPad app.